Hello, this is Matthew Armstrong, and welcome to Transformation Talk. Today I've got the great pleasure to be speaking with Elwin Robinson. Now, Elwin is he's a nutritional consultant, a Taoist herbalist, and also a transformational leader in the health world. So thank you very much for being with us today, Elwin, and it's much appreciated that you can make it on the call.
It's a great pleasure. I love doing these. I love sharing. So thank you so much for asking me, Matthew. I'm really
All
looking
right,
forward to it.
all right, thank you very much. Uh, could we start with just maybe just tell us a little bit about your journey, your history in health, and how you got to be where you are today as being a herbalist, and what you're doing right now?
Sure. Shall I try and keep it fairly brief?
Yeah, whatever. Few minutes, 5 minutes, or
Sure.
whatever.
Okay. So I've really been interested in it from birth. My mother had, I think, a tumor even before I was born, and my father suffered from chronic fatigue syndrome, and he had ME for many years. My mother had cancer like 3 or 4 times,
Hmm.
and then eventually died of it about 6 years ago.
All right.
I was raised macrobiotic to begin with,
Hmm.
which is like very strict, no sugar, nothing sweet, nothing chemical or processed. So that was until I was 6 years old, and then I went to school and then started eating massive amounts of everything that I wasn't supposed to.
From the top shop.
Um, yeah, exactly. Always vegetarian,
Right.
so my whole life. So I'm very aware of nutrition, perhaps
Hmm.
compared to the average child or the average
Absolutely.
person.
Yeah.
And my mother always had, vast amounts of supplements and not so much herbs, but some herbs and stuff like
Hmm.
that in the house. And she'd always do these cleanses and stuff like that, and so there'd always be this stuff around. So perhaps more aware of it. And she also had an absolute massive load of books everywhere, so there was
Right.
always a lot of information about this stuff. So that's kind of the beginning of it. Where it really happened for me. So I was always low on energy, and I put that down more to my genetics than anything else.
Right.
Just as I say, fairly weak genetics, to be honest. And to cope with that lack of energy, first of all, I started using a lot of sugar.
Hmm.
That was the thing to get my energy up, and that pretty much went through until I was a teenager.
Yeah.
But I remember I never had as much energy as everyone else. I remember,
Hmm.
like, when we were doing a race at school, I'd come like 24th out of 25.
Right.
Only the severely obese kid would be slightly behind me, but other than that, really, very unfit and
Hmm.
unhealthy. Um, when I was a teenager, I got into stimulants instead. I started off with coffee, then started smoking cigarettes, then
Hmm.
started smoking cannabis and alcohol. Really got into that path.
Hmm.
Um, I won't belabor all that, but that's basically how I got through life. Until my
Right.
mid 20s, and in my mid 20s, I had problems before that. In my early 20s, I actually was signed off work for 2 years of anxiety problems.
Hmm.
And it always amazed me at the time. The doctor, she was good in the sense that she didn't try and get me on loads of damaging drugs. So that's something. But she never once said to me, do you drink 10 cups of coffee a day? Maybe that might be why you've got
Hmm.
anxiety, or which was true, at the time, or all kinds of things. So not looking at anything that I was doing, which was obviously wrong, not encouraging me to do anything right.
Yeah.
Um, my mid 20s, when I was 25, my mother actually died of cancer, and I was pretty unhealthy by that time, ill a lot, very
Right.
low on energy, struggling to do my work, which is working as a chef, stressed, constant pressure, da da da.
Hmm.
But even that wasn't enough leverage for me to feel like I had to get it handled. But a couple of years later, I was cooking food, and I realised that the food I was cooking, working in a kind of Italian restaurant, good quality by most people's standards, but really, full of nasty fats and MSG and all
Did
that
Did
kind
you
of thing.
stay a vegetarian through your adult life?
Yes,
You were still
yeah, that's
vegetarian.
one
Okay.
thing that I stuck with. I mean,
Okay.
to me, maybe because of the way I was raised, meat has always looked like a dead body,
Hmm.
not something that you would eat.
Right.
It's a very simple distinction. It's just a carcass.
Hmm. So were you a
you know.
vegetarian chef then?
Yeah, I could prepare meat. I
Okay.
don't
Yeah.
particularly have issues of everyone else has the right to choose. There's
Mm.
plenty of other things that I wouldn't do that other people are free to do,
Yeah.
but eating dead bodies is one of them for me.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, always vegetarian, but that didn't really help with my health.
Hmm.
With the vast amounts of junk food, I was still
Sure.
mainly living off wheat,
Yeah.
dairy, and stimulants. So,
Hmm.
and like literally, I'd have like a croissant for breakfast, maybe like a pizza for lunch and then pasta and cheese for dinner. Is like that level of and I just had a health collapse. I was preparing food and it just literally making me sick, and someone said to me that that's the liver, one of the other chefs, and I was like, oh yeah, god, my mother had a weak liver all her life, maybe that's right. Looked into it, and then I basically quit my job as a chef. Didn't know what I was going to do next, didn't have any savings or anything, but I was just like, I'll find another way, and I did. I found another job which had a hell of a lot less stress, and then I just dedicated myself to my health. And I think that's a really important distinction, this thing about dedication. Like, I got to this point, like I said, I was sick, but it's not just that, there's loads of little things. It's going to the dentist and then telling me if I carry on that way, my teeth are going to like rotted out by the time I was in my mid-30s. That was a bit of a wake-up call. A particularly powerful one for me, I remember, is when I woke up, and the way that your tongue is often covered with that kind of film?
Right, yeah.
Especially when you're unhealthy. I woke up and my tongue was covered in literally grey sludge.
Okay. Yeah.
I was like, wow, that's pretty bad.
Bacteria.
I was smoking. Bacteria, but literally smoke as well.
Yeah, okay.
Just the amount that I was smoking loads, so it was coming out of me. It was horrible. And those little things, gave me a wake-up call. But for whatever reason, I basically decided, that's it. I'm going to get this problem handled once and for all, no matter what.
Yeah.
And everything springs from there. I'm sure you're familiar, Matthew, with success psychology. It's when you make a distinction like that, I'm going to resolve this no matter what. That's when things start working. And if you have any hesitation, any doubt, any kind of, oh well, if it doesn't work, I'll do something else, I'll forget about it, then often it's a struggle.
Yeah.
To be honest, it was still a struggle. I cut out all the bad things that I knew to be bad in terms of food. Didn't really feel any better. I then cut out all the drugs, cigarettes, cannabis, coffee, even wheat, sugar, which I've now defined as drugs in the way that they affect you. Didn't feel any better. And it was only really like a year later when I did the next step, which I'm sure you're aware of, for success, which is when I really started to ask for help. That I made my first breakthrough. I was getting ill over and over again, and I just kind of stumbled into this Chinese medicine shop, this acupuncture place. I was just attracted to the Chinese herbs which are being displayed there. And she looked at me, and I'd had a couple of ear infections over the month that just wouldn't go away, and she said, your kidneys are the weakest I've ever seen in someone your age. And your liver is shot, and various other things, and you need to do this, and I worked on that, and that was the first time I started to feel better.
Okay.
And then I really got into the whole thing about detoxing, and that made me feel better. And then I got into the raw foods thing. At the same time as I did a liver flush, and that made me feel loads better.
What sort of liver flush did you do?
The Andreas Moritz one, the one where you have a colonic, and then you use Epsom salts, and you drink lemon juice and olive oil, and then you excrete lots of the little green fluorescent pebbles. And that made a really big difference, as well as the colonics, which I'd also never done before. And that was like another level. And then I discovered the whole thing about alkalinity via Anthony Robbins. That was like, alkaline food, everything I ate was green, alkaline water, and that was good for a while. And then I discovered about and then after all that time, I worked with a live blood microscopist, very briefly, who trained with Robert Young, the Alkaline guy. And she looked at my blood and she's like, oh, it's still really not healthy for someone who's like eating 100% raw and all this kind of thing. And it was basically sugar. It was like sugars. And I was still addicted to sugars. I was eating healthily by most people's standards, but I was still eating like a packet of dates per meal, like really craving the sugar. And so that's when I made the decision to cut all the sugars out of my life. And I have to say, out of everything I've done, that's probably the thing that's made the biggest difference. Doing whatever was necessary to balance my blood sugar. That to me is the most crucial thing of all. Although you can't start with that, it's almost impossible. But it's the one that, yes, that is really it. And that's when life really started to get better. And then probably the last distinction I'll make is when I really got into the kind of stuff that David Wolf promotes. I did his Longevity Now program, really cleaned up my immune system, and that took me to a whole other level again. Although there were definitely some dramas within that, and from that point on, that's where I really started. I was at such a level, and I'd improved so much compared to where I was before. That's where I felt confident to start teaching. And the whole teaching thing really came about, but without any attention. It was like organic. I was working in this raw food restaurant beforehand, and pretty much we'd have like people come and volunteer to help almost every day. I was a chef there, and they'd spend pretty much most of them would spend all day kind of asking me questions, and then all the customers would be asking me questions. I seem to have this vibe of someone who knows things, so people always ask me stuff. And one person would just ask me question after question. I said, would you like a consultation where we actually, really work through this stuff? He goes, oh, I'd love to. Oh, great, okay. And I really used like the Anthony Robbins system for it, and I'm really glad that I did, because the focus was all on, what are your goals? What are the things holding you back?
Yeah.
What are the results that you really want to achieve? And then the more detailed health stuff of really understanding where the person's coming from, and then looking at, so the whole coaching thing brought into it of really looking to understand the person and then make advice based on that, rather than what almost everyone else seems to do, which is to have this dogmatic set of things which they believe is the case and then trying to force that onto you. Yeah. That's normally what I'd experienced when I'd gone to see anyone. So yeah, to really understand the person, and through that process of working with other people, other stuff's come up for me. But I'd say, that's the main thing, and it was very quick for me. The healing process, because I was so dedicated, and because I do whatever it takes, and because I'm an extremist. It didn't take me decades. It took me, like 2-3 years, something like that, to go from kidneys being the weakest that this Chinese medicine practitioner had ever seen to now they say it's it's top, one of the highest they've ever seen. So that level of improvement very quickly, and in a nutshell, that would be my process.
And how's your health right now?
Excellent.
Okay, so everything cleared up.
Yeah. I mean, occasionally I have physical kind of symptoms. My liver's still, as I say, naturally weak, so sometimes I notice that, and I have to be good to myself. I have to nourish myself. I have to make sure I don't poison myself.
Right.
But because I'm living the way that I'm living, because I do and walk my talk and practice most of the things that I recommend, it really is good. And the area of health, which I think a lot of people don't understand, and I'm sure you're familiar with this distinction, Matthew, is that the biggest shift for me is not so much in my symptoms, it was in my psychology.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I went from someone who was depressed, angry all the time, anxiety, all this kind of stuff, to someone who's confident and looking to contribute to the world. And I won't say all my wonderful qualities, obviously, but you know what I mean. I went from someone who's basically negative and achieved nothing to someone who is positive and focused on making the world a better place. And I'd say to me that's the most profound difference, really.
Yes.
Because the whole thing about symptoms is like, so it's nice not to be bothered and troubled and suffering, but what really matters, and what I'm really focused on when I work with someone, is taking them from someone who is just struggling to survive, or even who can't cope, to taking them to someone who feels so good and so full of energy that they really want to contribute to the world around them. And that's, I would feel, is the most crucial distinction.
Okay, great. So something I wanted to discuss with you as well, because you, like me, we both have a broad sort of understanding of health and different areas of nutrition as well. And I've interviewed some people, some leading health leaders, who have said, this one way is the best. For example, don't touch any sugar, and then someone else who says, don't touch any fat, or keep it low fat. Others say keep it high fat. And some say don't eat any salt. Others say you need 12 to 14 grams of salt a day. Others say you get enough salt from the air. Others say you get enough salt from your tomatoes and celery. And so there's this issue with fats versus sugars, salt versus no salt. And I've just from learning what you've done before, and listening to your interviews and everything before, I know you've got a good broad understanding with this. So would you be able to share some of that and maybe shed a bit of light on that for maybe some of the viewers who have watched some of the other interviews and are maybe a little bit confused now when one health leader is saying one thing and completely opposed to that, another health leader saying completely the opposite. I know it's a big question, but would you be able to maybe share some of that?
Of course, I'm more than happy to address that. I think it's a really important issue, and it's really important not just in the area of health. It's important in life to understand that truth is always contextual. Contextual means within a given context, and the world is not black and white. The world is not right or wrong. Now you can go the wrong way in that and think, oh well, there's no such thing as truth. I'll just do whatever I want. There's no such thing as right or wrong. I'll just do whatever I want. That's not accurate either. But what that means, it's like the difference between morality and situational ethics. So morality says, here's a book of rules, here's the law, this is right, this is wrong, that's it. Situational ethics says there is such a thing as right or wrong, but it's dependent on the situation. So, killing someone's wrong, but maybe in the context of a war or someone attacking you, it's not wrong. And maybe even it's wrong then. Maybe you should let them kill you. It all depends on the situation, right? It all depends on the context. So exactly the same thing is true in this whole health world. So because I'm very much grounded in the Anthony Robbins kind of system, I'm always assuming that people come from a place of positive intent. So if we take, say, a Douglas Graham versus a Robert Young, just as an example, you must eat only sugar versus you must never eat sugar. Yep. I'm not looking at saying which is right, which is wrong, or I'm not thinking, one of them is trying to deceive us. They both come from a really good positive intent. That's the way I look at it. So everyone is right, but only within their given context. And what they do is just selectively, like all dogmatists do, not, the people who are dogmatic, people who are fundamentalists, they just ignore every situation which doesn't fit into the context which they've decided is true. So just like the two examples you gave, I would say eating a lot of sugar or carbohydrate is a bad idea if your pancreas, which in Chinese medicine we call the spleen organ system, is weak. Eating too much fat is a bad idea if your liver organ system is weak. And to throw another one on top of there, eating lots of protein is a bad idea if your kidney organ system is weak. So for each of them, there's a situation where it is true and there's a situation where it isn't true. So someone who eats like only fruit or only carbohydrates and thrives on it, these people aren't lying, that exists. These people are going to be people who have, very strong pancreas, people who have a strong spleen organ system, people who don't have that issue. People who, thrive on fat, they're going to be people who have a different organ system, right? Yeah. So it's really not about what is right or what is wrong. It's about what is right or what is wrong for me right now. And understanding that's going to be different, not just between people, but also within situations. Like for myself, I've gone from really cutting down on the fat at some point to heal the liver, and then cutting down all the carbohydrate and eating just fat, while I was looking at dealing with my blood sugar. And now I'm eating more carbohydrate and a little bit more of a balance, but actually more carbohydrates than ever before. And a lot of people say to me, "Oh, what do you do? I want to eat like you." And I'm always like, unless you happen to be in the same situation as me and you're like me, let's discourage that. Let's really look at what's relevant and most optimal for you right now. And to be honest, the diet of someone who is already healthy is very different from the diet for someone who's healing. Yeah. And that's the kind of thing that I address, a lot of my training. And I feel some people lose track of that. I mean, I absolutely love David Wolf. He's another example you gave. But I feel with him sometimes he's saying, "Oh, I do this, and I feel the best ever." And it's like, again, he's not lying. It's totally right. That's great for him. But if other people try to live on just cacao and honey, like he talks about sometimes, then they're going to suffer severely. Because they've still got stimulant sensitivities or they've still got sugar sensitivities. So it really is a matter of working out what's appropriate for you. And I guess that's the bottom line answer to this. Okay. And so if I say I've created a synthesis between different systems, it's so understanding that we're in a certain context, like if someone's kidneys are weak, then like the Robert Young system is going to be really appropriate, maybe, getting lots of alkaline foods in there. So really looking at what situation you're in and acting accordingly, rather than trying to look for a big list of rules which applies to everyone.
Okay, so let's looking at just say someone's kidneys are weak. How do they know if their kidneys are weak? And what should they do if they are?
What should they do if they are is quite a tricky one.
Okay.
I mean, we can tackle a couple of basic tips, but it's something, healing the kidneys is pretty tricky, to be honest. It's something that is much more focused in on Eastern medicine than Western, kind of even alternative in the West. It's really not dealt with in the West at all. Right. The program I created called the Easy Exhaustion Cure is pretty much dedicated to healing the kidneys. It's not a plug, but basically there's like 8 hours of audio in there, and that's me covering the bare minimum of what I feel a person needs. Right, cool. So I'm not going to really be able to cover that in just a call. How can you tell there's something wrong with them? The most easy way usually with the organ systems is to look at symptoms and emotions. And in fact, emotions are simpler with the kidneys. The question is, do you feel fear or anxiety in any situation? Because and stress. Sorry, stress is another word for fear. It's the same thing on a biochemical level. It's adrenal activity. We use the word stress because if you say I'm stressed about this, it sounds kind of cool. And if you say I'm afraid of this, then it makes you sound weak, but it's actually the same thing. So if you do experience fear, do you experience stress, do you feel overwhelmed, which is where fear, then you've got a problem with your kidneys. I mean, that's pretty much the bottom line of it, and that's the easiest way to look. The other things with symptoms, if you've got lower back pain, if your knees tend to be tense, you've got to look at all the things that kidneys are related to. So the kidneys are related to like the brain and central nervous system. So do you lack memory? Do you lack focus? Do you lack clarity? Then you've probably got an issue with your kidneys. Do you lack sex drive or have a massively over stimulated sex drive? Then that's related to the kidneys because they're related to the reproductive glands. Do you have hormonal issues? Then you have an issue with your kidneys. Do you tend to urinate too frequently? Well, that's to do with the kidneys because it's related to the bladder. Do you have pain in your joints and your bones? Well, then that's related to the kidneys, so that's kind of connected. So we look at all the things that tend to show up in relation to the kidneys, and there's more kind of slightly esoteric things about it. Like often the thyroid suffers when the kidneys suffer. They're definitely connected, and I look at healing the thyroid in the same program too. But that could be due to things like do you have a problem expressing yourself? Do you often feel stifled, like you can't say what you really want to? Then that's often related to the kidneys as well. So we're really looking at a lot of different things. And there is a questionnaire of the program that really talks you through it. Now, with the kidneys, pretty much the question is, do you have any major chronic health issues? And then if the answer is yes, then you've probably got an issue with the kidneys, because they are, in Chinese medicine, the root of the body's energy.
Yeah.
And how that relates to what people might be more familiar with the West is, do you have a problem with an excess of acidity? Because it's basically the job of the kidneys to neutralize the excess acidity to the body and to keep the pH balance of the blood. It's the job of the lungs mainly to excrete acidity, but it's the job of the kidneys to neutralize and deal with the acidity.
Right.
So if you have any of the issues which are described in the kind of the acid alkaline world as being too acidic, then again you've got issues with the kidneys.
So one of the things to do would be to alkalize with green juices and things. Would that be very helpful for the kidneys?
Definitely, and I'm very glad you said that, Matthew. My experience with that is that kind of alkaline water, although in the short and sometimes medium term it can be very helpful, and it definitely relieves symptoms and it can definitely bring relief. Long term it often makes things worse because it's not hydrating generally. And when you have an issue, you can do two things basically, and often you want to do both, but you can do two things. You can either address the symptoms or you can address the cause. So if your kidneys are weak and as a result you have a lot of excess acidity and that's making you feel bad, just to pile in a load of alkalinity will make you feel better. But it's not addressing the root of the problem, because the root of the problem is the fact that the kidneys are weak. So I would actually say you're better off doing what you can to heal the kidneys, which is drinking water that's hydrating, as an example. Not dehydrating water, which is alkaline. Having green juices, definitely, that would be an excellent way, and that's part of the program. Getting the lungs working again in a way that they start to excrete acidity, that takes a massive burden off the kidneys. So even though it's addressing the lungs, it really helps the kidneys as well.
So we're talking about breathing exercises as well for the lungs?
Like a pranayama type of thing, with the a special emphasis on learning to breathe from the belly. That's the number one thing, and then learning to breathe out slowly, because it's during the slow out breath that we release a lot of acidity. So those would be the crucial distinction. And then taking in herbs as well, which strengthen the kidneys. And obviously, I'm mainly a tonic herbalist, to be honest. I don't know the exact purposes of the 10,000 plus herbs which are part of Chinese medicine. I just work with 100 or so which tonify, which really build up the strength of the body. Because I feel that that's ultimately more relevant. If you've got a severe health complaint, then there's certain herbs which are helpful to just relieve the symptoms. But for me, it's always about getting back to strengthening the body so that it can make itself better. And then the last thing I just mentioned in this regard, as we're just doing a very quick recap for the kidneys, it would be minerals, and especially electrolytes. Making sure you have the right amount of salts, the right amount of magnesium, the right amount of potassium. Those tend to be the three most crucial ones.
Some foods we'd get them in. What would they be?
Yes, but in the case of magnesium, I find that when you have a severe magnesium deficiency, which is very common for those who suffer from stress and kidney problems, getting enough from food is almost impossible. It's almost impossible to reverse a severe magnesium deficiency just through food. It's unfortunate, but true. So looking at some kind of supplementation, I really like magnesium oil, which you spray on the skin. It's a totally natural thing. It's something like a 300 million old ancient seabed salt.
Right.
basically. Then you put on yourself, absorb
Okay.
it straight into your bloodstream. Wonderful. But yeah, some form of magnesium, potassium. I always do recommend getting from fresh vegetables, ideally, or fruits. 'Cause
Mhm.
that's where you get your potassium from.
Yeah.
And salt. Some good quality unheated sea salt or seaweeds. Great way of
Mhm.
getting the sodium back in. And to address the other thing that you mentioned earlier, Matthew, about the salt, again, it's contextual. So someone who has healthy kidneys and very little stress in their lives can thrive without taking in any salt.
Mhm.
But someone who has kidney weakness, someone who has a lot of stress in their lives, the more stress you have, the more salt you need.
Yeah. Okay.
So again, it's not about this person's right, this person's wrong. It's about where are you at?
Yeah. Yeah. Because some health leaders would say you need 12 to 14 grams of salt a day, and then another health leader would say, well, look, neither me or my uh, students have used salt in years and years and years, and we're fine.
Mm,
So then it's like, well, who's right? And you say it depends on the context of what's going on with them, right?
yeah, they're both right.
Okay.
I mean, people tend to attract to them other people who conform to their expectations of reality.
Yeah.
So if you believe something's true, like not on a I believe it, but on a really deep instinctual gut level, then that's what the world presents you with. That's the way things work. We attract not so much that which we believe, we attract that which we expect.
Mm-hmm.
More than anything, on a really
We,
deep
we
level.
we get what we look for, really. If we look for something hard enough, we find it, right? Whether it's good or bad.
Yeah, exactly. But but that's true. But then also within that, there is the fact that there are these hard facts to life as well. I mean, like for me, I'm a person who tends to have kidneys that are weak, naturally, and tends to be stressed. So when I tried not eating salt for 2 or 3 months, I got very, very unhealthy as a result. And I had a live blood analysis done again, and they said to me, "God, the bonds in your cells seem to be breaking down. I just don't understand this." I said, "Have you stopped eating salt?" I'm like, "Yeah, actually, that's exactly what I've done. I've tried it." It's like, "Oh well, God, need to get back on that." And oh God, I loved it. Enjoy salt. It's wonderful. It's great. It's my favourite flavour. Why would I ever cut this out of my life? But who knows? If I was a person who was a hell of a lot more chilled and relaxed and not liable to stress, maybe I wouldn't have needed it. So again, context.
And we're talking about healthy salts such as Celtic Ocean sea salt, Himalaya salt, that sort of salt, or is there something else you recommend?
Most definitely, yeah, exactly what you say.
Okay. Okay, great. How about pancreas, liver? How do we know if our pancreas is out of whack or our liver is out of whack? How do we know whether we need fats or sugars? So for example, the pancreas.
Um, so how do we know the pancreas is out of whack? If there's a few things. If you can't go for more than 6 hours without boosting your blood sugar, whether it be with a stimulant or with sugar or with creating stress in your life, like creating a drama.
Yeah.
If you can't go for more than 6 hours without doing one of those three things during the day, then you probably have a blood sugar imbalance, which relates to the pancreas. If you have a tendency towards depression, then you've probably got a blood sugar imbalance. Those are kind of the most simple things that I would look for. If you crave sweet foods, ironically, obviously, that tends to be because you have a pancreas blood sugar imbalance. And if your energy is not consistent, if it tends to be up and down and all over the place, and if you have any kind of mental health issues, almost I'd say not just depression, then that tends to be because the blood sugar is swinging up and down all over the place, and that's always the first thing that I look at resolving before I looked at neurotransmitters like serotonin or anything like that. Let's start with the basics. Let's get you hydrated and get your kidneys working. Let's get your blood sugar balanced, and then 90+% of the time these things sort themselves out and your body starts making the right hormones and neurotransmitters and all the rest of it. But let's work at what's really basic. Anyway, sorry, that's a bit of a tangent. But yeah, basically those are the things that I'd look for most. And there's all sorts of things. I mean, if people tend to have like a pain or a discomfort on their left side, that tends to indicate that that organ system isn't happy on the left side. Sorry, just underneath the rib cage, and all kinds of things. But those are the things that pretty much always tell you.
Okay, and then would it be the same as for the kidneys, getting more alkaline foods, drinks, things like that into the system? What would be the quickest thing to start to normalize and balance that?
No, definitely not. I mean, that kind of stuff is all good because, like I say, the kidneys are the root of the body's energy. But that kind of stuff will not necessarily help that situation at all.
Okay.
The most in my experience, the most crucial thing that I would look at is if someone has a blood sugar imbalance, is first of all, a lot of time when people have a blood sugar imbalance, they have a very particular pattern. They don't eat in the morning. Maybe they just have a stimulant or nothing at all, and then they massively overeat at night. That's the most common thing. The other thing is they tend to, have a lot of stimulants and sugar in their diet and their lifestyle. So the first thing to look at is basically trying to reverse that. The most simple thing is between an hour and 2 hours after waking up, whenever that may be, make sure that you have a meal. Not just a snack, not just a bit of fruit juice, not just a bit of green juice, but a meal. If you really have issues with digestion, that can be a liquid meal. It can be like a substantial smoothie. If that resonates with you, that's good as well. But make sure it's something really fulfilling and satisfying. So that's the first distinction. Second distinction is make sure that in that meal you have mainly protein and fat, good quality, of a type which agrees with you, obviously, and minimize the carbohydrates. Just for that first meal to begin with. Right, because people try these candida diets, stuff like that, and if you say to someone, cut out all the sugars, cut out all the fruits, it's almost impossible. I mean, sugar is the most addictive drug in the world, and within that, I'm including fruit sugars and stuff like that. If a person treats it like a drug, which they often do, it's the most addictive thing in the world. So I've had many friends and clients who literally been able to give up cocaine, cigarettes, heroin, everything else, with relative ease sometimes, and yet they can't kick sugar. Alcoholics, because sugar is basically the gateway drug that leads to all other drug addictions. So it's really respecting that. So we're not going to say to the person, the client, don't eat sugar anymore for 3 months, 6 months, a year, which would actually cure them, because that's just going to be impossible to them. So then we have to say, okay, make sure just that first meal that you have in the day doesn't contain carbohydrates. And what that does, as I'm sure you're aware, Matthew, it stimulates glucagon and not insulin, which gets people off on the right track. And when they do that, the rest of the day tends to work better. Then even if later on they have something sweet or something sugary or some kind of stimulant, it's still better. It's still better that they have it later in the day. Like what I say to people is, if you still love desserts and crave desserts and snacks, leave it until as late in the day as possible, because if you have like a piece of cheesecake or a chocolate bar at 8 in the evening, and then like an hour later you feel like you haven't got enough energy, then that's fine. Go to bed early, right, and get a good night's sleep. Perfect. Okay, it's not ideal, but we're talking in practical real life here. Whereas if you have that 8 in the morning because you're rushing on the way to work, that's going to basically ruin and sabotage your day. Because for the rest of the day you're going to be chasing your blood sugar. So that's the most important thing. Start off, make sure you have a decent, large, for you, whatever that may be, substantial, fulfilling meal first thing in the morning. Make sure it's high in protein and fat, low in carbohydrate.
Well, give me an example of a healthy, high-fat, high-protein meal that you could have in the morning.
Well, in the kind of raw food world, I mean, particularly, I'm not eating all raw these days. The two main things that I recommend is either green smoothie, savoury, so basically like a green soup. So what would you have in there? Some kind of water or some kind of tonic tea is the liquid base. Some kind of green leaves, maybe spinach, coriander. Some kind of fat, like maybe spinach, maybe avocado, coconut oil, something like that. Some kind of protein, so maybe hemp seeds or some kind of protein supplement, maybe brown rice protein like people are having these days. Put in some salt, put in some lemon juice, and you've got a delicious green soup. Okay, great. Perfect. If you want something more substantial and filling, like I would want, like a big salad with all your favourite salady bits, vegetables, make sure again you use the same elements. So make sure you get some protein in there, maybe some pumpkin seeds or some hemp seeds. Getting maybe some healthy oils in there. Make sure you put some salt in there. Drink it down. Absolutely, drink it down, smoothie, wolf it down the food, just really enjoy that, really have something substantial. Now, if you have a really sweet tooth and like after a meal like that, you still, oh no, that's not satisfying me, I want something sweet. It's even better to have something sweet for a dessert after breakfast than it is to start off with something sweet, or to start off with something high carbohydrate. Another distinction which I found for people who do people who do need high carbohydrate food, because here's the challenge, Matthew, I'm sure you come across this in practice. Some people are like, well, my kidneys are screwed, and my liver is screwed, and my pancreas is screwed all at the same time. So then what do I do, right? That gets really challenging.
Water
and
fast.
it's like, okay, yeah, water fast. Oh, but then that unbalances your blood sugar as well, right? So, and I was in that situation. All three of those systems were screwed for me. So basically, then what I had to do for me is prioritize. So, first of all, it was about cutting out carbohydrates cutting out the fats while I heal my liver, because that was the most basic issue. And then the problem was that then my energy was all over the place, and but I just had to live with that, and then I had to cut out all the carbohydrates while I was healing my blood sugar, and that made me feel bad as well. It made me feel heavy and sluggish, and had sort of issues with that, but I just had to do that because then that fixed that issue. And now, like I said, I found I'm actually a more high carbohydrate person, so I eat a lot of carbohydrates now. But now I can eat a carbohydrate meal, and then 8 hours later feel like I still have plenty of energy, even though I haven't eaten anything or done anything else. So that's okay now. My blood sugar stable. But until my blood sugar is stable, really bad idea. So this thing about diet is the most crucial thing with blood sugar. And the other thing I'd say is minerals. Really get those minerals back in, which are depleted by sugar abuse. So especially chromium, vanadium, also manganese, zinc, magnesium. Those are probably like the most crucial ones. Get them in good form. I really like the angstrom mineral ones.
Are we going to get these from any foods, or do we have to supplement?
Again, I would say if you're already healthy, yes. Cinnamon, as an example, is really high in chromium. Manganese is high in seaweeds. Zinc is a challenge for anyone who's vegan or vegetarian, to be honest, even if you do eat like the right foods, because it's just low. But certainly if you eat animal foods, especially like fish, you tend to be alright for zinc. Magnesium, like I say, again, is a challenge, but for most of these we can get them from foods, but only if we have okay amounts anyway. So what I believe is so valuable about supplements, especially good quality ones, which by the way only about 2% of them are, 98% of supplements are junk, but the 2% that are valuable are very valuable because they are reversing a deficiency. They're not just giving you what you need to get through life. They're actually taking a situation, and something like blood sugar imbalance on one level you could see as just severe mineral depletion, and they're reversing that issue. So that's where I feel. So do you need them for the rest of your life? The only reason you'd need to carry on taking them for the rest of your life if you keep abusing sugar for the rest of your life. Then you'd need to keep taking in the like you need chromium to process sugar. So if you carry on just taking the sugar, then you have to carry on taking the blood support minerals in order to process the sugar. But assuming that you're sorting the other things out as well, then you just have it for a while till your reserves are back up, and then you can stop. And then the last thing again for the pancreas, to strengthen it, I would say would be focusing on tonic herbs, which strengthen the pancreas. So that would be the other point. That would be the most basic kind of 3-step process I'd recommend to people.
Okay, just to clarify, are you grouping all sugars together, including fruit sugars, when you say that?
From a blood sugar point of view, I think it's utterly irrelevant whether the sugar comes from a date or from high fructose corn syrup. Like the stuff that you find in Coca-Cola or whatever. Now, of course, from other points of view, they're a completely different story. From a nutritional point of view, there's a hell of a lot more in dates. From a toxicity point of view, there's a hell of a lot less toxicity in dates. So there's lots of good reasons to go for their, fruits or healthy sugars rather than the processed sugars. But purely from a blood sugar point of view, I don't think it makes any difference whatsoever. I often say to people who have these kind of issues, who worry about this, and they're like, "Oh, well, I used to eat unhealthily, but now I have this fruit smoothie, but I feel terrible." And it's like, well, you'd probably actually be better off eating bacon and eggs than you would be eating what you're eating now. Because at least that would help to kind of keep your blood sugar on a more even keel. So again, truth is contextual. I never thought when I started off as a vegan that I would be telling anyone that bacon and eggs is a good idea compared to what they're doing, but there we go. The realities are often different from what we have in our head of what's true.
Because even there are people who have gone high fruit 80-10-10 style, who have had diabetes, and their diabetes has been reversed through eating the high fruit with the sugar in it. How does that work, do you think?
I'd say in that case, probably the main reason that they got to that in the first place is through toxicity. So eating that high fruit, low whatever diet has cleared out the toxicity, and that was the crucial leverage point for them in that instance.
Yeah.
But I'm sure those examples exist again, because I'm sure these people aren't lying. But my experience living in this climate where I'm in the UK right now is I've never met anyone who's done the 80-10-10 diet and been successful with it.
Okay.
And I've met a lot of people who've done it. But then again, that's the climate thing. Again, I think that's a part of it. If you're in a hot, dry climate, and if your internal environment is hot and dry, then that makes a huge difference. And for the 80-10-10 thing, I mean, the thing which I think is most amazing about Doug Graham's approach is he's encouraging exercise.
Yeah.
I think you could probably literally, I've heard stories about like guys in the Foreign Legion who would literally live off like drinking brandy while they were like trudging through the desert, right? And they were thriving.
Yeah.
So there's more important things than diet, and one of the most important is oxygen.
Yeah, I know myself from being I was 5 years in the Royal Marines, and my diet was all of our diets were atrocious, including massive binge drinking as well, and eating highly processed ration packs out in the field for weeks on end, and completely dead food, no living food whatsoever. But we always had high energy. We were always in good spirits. We're always.
I was about to say you were probably healthier than you are now, right?
You never know. But we were in good spirits. We were happy. We were sharp. We were fit. We would drink all night and get 2 hours sleep, get up the next morning and do a 10-mile run. No problem.
So I'd be suspicious about that, just to answer your question about the whole Doug Graham thing as well. I'd say, okay, so they went from eating whatever they were eating to eating just fruits, but did they also go, by any chance, from being sedentary to living an active lifestyle? Because if so, that can more than explain why they got healthier.
Yeah, sure.
That's the other thing. And I don't tend to tell people that they need to exercise several hours a day because, I'm not Doug Graham. I first of all, I don't do it. I exercise a few times a week. But, second of all, it's very difficult to get people to do that, right? He works with people intensely one-on-one, I think, and does retreats and working with them. I'm not going to be able to persuade someone to do that over a phone call, which is normally what I've got. So I look at the things that are most high leverage for what I can reach people with. But the other thing to really balance your blood sugar is exercise. Yeah. Regular, proper exercise makes all the difference in the world to these things, especially blood sugar.
Okay. Let's look at the liver quickly then. Then the next thing, how do we know if our liver is clogged up, if it needs to be cleansed?
More than anything, normally it's having issues with anger, guilt, jealousy, resentment, any of those kind of things. Not having a creative drive, maybe lacking a sex drive, having issues with boundaries and assertiveness. Not being able to assert yourself, and often these are connected. So when you aren't able to assert yourself and say no to people, that's when you tend to build up resentment and guilt. So they kind of go hand in hand together. So again, I look at emotional issues first. Of course, physical symptoms, any kind of toxicity issues, particularly headaches, pain on the right side, right shoulder, tension in the neck or the jaw. Skin issues, especially where the skin's kind of dry and woody. That's a classic kind of liver issue. Those are kind of the things that in reality most commonly I hear from people, which is just like a telltale sign. That's what's going on.
What about like constipation, that sort of thing, problems with the bowels? Because does the bile not back up into the liver?
Most definitely, but I would then put that down to an issue of the lung organ system, because the large intestine comes under the lungs.
Right. Okay.
And I realise the skin comes under the lungs as well, but I would, if that were the particular issue, like if I had someone come to me and say my main issue is constipation, I wouldn't then look to help them with their liver. I'd look to help them with their large intestine and their lung organ system. Okay. That's just kind of the way that I work with it. So for the liver, those things particularly. There's something else which I'm kind of not remembering right now. Maybe it'll come out, but I guess the other thing is the way they respond to fats. So people who tend to crave fatty food and people who tend to crave alcohol, but people who react negatively to fatty food, especially, that's like a classic telltale sign that the liver isn't healthy as well. Of course, the other thing is reactivity. So people with hay fever, people with any kind of autoimmune issue like that. That's normally a liver thing as well. Yeah, that would be like the main things which I come across in everyday life.
Okay. And then what would be the how to start healing the liver?
Healing the liver. So one of the distinctions which I've made in my practice is, with some exceptions, and there are always some exceptions, but generally I look at healing the kidneys first. Okay, and I think I said that for the blood sugar issue as well. But assuming that I've already worked them to get the kidneys healthier and we've dealt with that basic stuff, healing the liver. First of all, I look at strengthening the liver, tonifying the liver more than anything. That's mainly with herbs. It's certain exercises, people are open to doing that as well. And then kind of concurrently with that, actually, ironically, not working on the liver. So we heal the liver not by looking at the liver. The main thing which I focus on is clearing out the detox pathways, which are the methods whereby your body actually excretes toxicity. And that actually relates more to the lung organ system. So again, I look at healing the lungs, not at the liver, to help the liver. Because generally, if the liver's overburdened, it's normally overburdened with toxicity of one form or another, even if that food, even if it's like cooked fat. So we look at clearing out all the ways toxicity leaves the body, and then generally the toxic load on the total toxic load on the body afterwards gets better, and then there's less of a strain on the liver.
Okay.
That's the most simple thing. So shall I go through those very briefly?
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great. Thanks. Yeah. I know
Sure.
we're actually coming up on an hour, and I actually still had loads to ask you. Loads of questions I wanted to
So
ask.
we can do part 2 at some point then.
Yeah. Sure. Why not?
But I'll finish this 4 as we've done these 3 organs. So you want to clear out, first of all, you want to start using the lungs to excrete toxicity. And that's the thing that we talked about a little bit earlier. So breathing properly from the belly, so using more of full capacity, and particularly getting more in the habit of breathing out slowly, and doing particularly breathing practices where you're breathing out slowly. That's really important for detoxification. It's the most ignored thing in the world that we're in, and probably the most important thing as well. And kind of natural ways for that, like literally detoxing, as any exercise. That's one of the reasons that exercise makes you feel so great. It's because as long as you're breathing quickly, you are detoxing. You're panting, whatever, you're getting the toxicity out. It's not so good for alkalizing though when you're doing that kind of exercise and you're panting away. So that's where the kind of deep breathing exercises like the pranayama, that's great, because not only is it detoxifying, but it's also alkalizing you and doing all that great stuff to you at the same time. But still, anything where you're using your lungs, good to get out toxicity. The natural response of an animal when it's been poisoned is often to start to run it off. So it just goes frantic, and that frantic isn't just a fear, it's it's just looking at getting that out as quickly as possible. Breathing is a really primary and natural way to get toxicity out of you. So that's breathing. I'll just go through this quickly. Next one's the skin. So keeping the skin clear is one thing, exfoliation, skin brushing, stuff like that. And then on a more proactive level, actually encouraging your body to sweat. So again, that could be exercise, but mainly like sauna or a steam room or something like that, where you're really encouraging your body to sweat buckets of. That's really going to help get the toxicity out via the skin.
Also making sure the steam room is healthy steam, right? Because
I was about to say, so I only ever use a sauna personally. I never use the steam room because the steam is full of chlorine. But still, it's one of those, is it better or worse things? I'd say if someone has particular issues with toxicity, that's probably better if steam room is the only option to get them to sweat it out and then deal with the chlorine later, rather than saying, okay, I won't do it because of the chlorine. But obviously every situation is different. If someone's particularly reactive to chlorine, then they'd want to look at something else. An infrared sauna is by far the best one. The other one is the bladder, which I normally really focus on more when we do the kidneys, but that is a way that toxicity leaves the body. So plenty of adequate hydration, and again getting the right electrolytes in there to make sure that your body can really excrete those toxins. And then largely the large intestine, which is a lot about diet, the way we eat, again, more hydration, more magnesium, because that helps peristalsis, the movement of waste through the body. More green foods for pretty much the same reason, helps movement of waste out. And then again, getting proactive, doing enemas or colonic hydrotherapy to really clear out that backlog, or using herbs, maybe gentle laxatives like aloe vera, or maybe more extreme ones like Cenopods or ascorbic acid powder, to really get that bad stuff out of there. And what I find is if you work on all 4 systems at the same time and make it a regular habit day by day, then toxicity issues and any issues with the liver massively become relieved.
Okay.
And then from there, there's other stuff. I really highly recommend zeolites in order to help the liver get out those toxins, which otherwise it'd really struggle to process. All antioxidants are helpful for the liver. Sometimes, anyway, various supplements. There's all kinds of things that you can get into, but
Yeah.
that would be the really basic high leverage point that I'd always make sure that someone hits.
Okay. Brilliant. Great information there, Edwin. Yeah, brilliant stuff, Elwin. Yeah, I've got a ton more questions I want to ask you, but I think can we do a part 2 at some stage?
I'd love to.
Yeah, because you're a wealth of information, and it's really good stuff that you're sharing. Good in depth as well, giving people a deeper understanding. I think as well. That's phenomenal. Just for now, is there anything else you'd like to share in this interview before we finish up?
Yeah, I'll just mention what I do. I mean, I already have a website which kind of ships within Europe. If you're in the US, sorry, it's called Line Art Herbs, and the guarantee for there is that everything that's sold in there, kind of superfood, supplements, that kind of thing, it's all high quality. It's like literally all stuff. I've done the research. I use it myself. If I haven't used it myself, it's not on the site. So that's kind of the main benefit of going to there. You can trust it. And of course, herbs. It's got my special tonic herb formulations, which many people have very much appreciated. But we're not talking about that right now. What else? If you're interested in, if you recognise yourself a lot in the kidney thing, then I really highly recommend the Easy Exhaustion Cure. It's not just for exhaustion. That's just what I decided to call it at the end. But you could easily call it the Easy Stress Cure or anything else, because there's basically the same cause for those kind of things. So if that resonates with you. And then lastly, I'm launching a new website, probably by the time you watch this, called elwinrobinson.com. Loads and loads of free information. It's going to be much more about, less about selling products and much more about training, stuff like this, where I just basically share with you stuff which really helps, which really works. And various options there. You can join, become a member, and do some training with me, or have a consultation with me, and find out what the hell is actually going on, or even sign up for my health mastery program, which is going to be like an in-depth coaching thing where you have constant, regular support. There's always someone at the other end of the phone who can help you, and that's only really, to be honest, Matthew, for people who are absolutely dedicated to health. Those kind of people who have made that decision, like, I'm going to do it no matter what, or who are willing to make that decision now, and then we can work together. And that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay. Wonderful. So lionheartherbs.com or elwinrobinson.com, is that right?
Yes, and we've also got easyexhaustioncure.com as well.
Okay, fantastic. So we'll leave it at that for a cliffhanger for the next
What should we talk about next time? That'll be a good cliffhanger.
Oh, what would you like to talk about? What's important? What do people really need to know that other health leaders maybe aren't sharing so much, or maybe there's some confusion out there about what's prominent?
Great question. To me, the main thing is this whole issue of getting yourself to do things. That's the most important thing. Yeah. So to me, health breaks down into two things. It breaks down into strategy and action. Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, if you have the wrong strategy, if you're trying to heal yourself or something by doing completely the wrong thing, it's not going to work. But more than that, it's really about action. It's really about what you actually do. And I'm sure the same thing's true for you, Matthew. You find that this out very quickly when you work with a lot of real people. Their main problem is not knowing what to do. It's on getting themselves to do it.
Exactly. And part of that as well would be having the energy to do it as well, right?
Exactly. So where I feel that I can perhaps provide something next time that not everyone is addressing is, some people are very good at getting people to take action, but they don't really understand about health. So that's only partly helpful. And then some people understand all about health, but they don't really understand how to get people to take action. So that's only partly helpful. So really combining the two together is the thing that makes the biggest difference. We can discuss that next time maybe.
Okay. Yeah. Wonderful. Look forward to that.
Yeah, thank you, Matthew.
Thank you for your time, Elwin. It's been a real pleasure. I've really enjoyed this interview, and it's fantastic information for the viewers as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to share.
All right. So thank you very much, you, the viewer. I've really enjoyed this, to tell you the truth. So look forward to next time. My name is Matthew Armstrong. Thank you for watching Transformation Talk.